David here with Figboot on Pens, back again with another fountain pen review. Today I have a limited edition pen for you from Esterbrook. It was something released in the middle of last year, but there are still a few of these available, so I felt it was worthwhile to take a look at it. The pen I'm talking about is the Esterbrook Camden composition. What I'm going to do today is go over the parts and features of the composition, talk about what I care for and what I don't care for about it. I'll show some measurements, size comparisons, and provide a writing sample. Thanks go out to Kenro Industries for providing this pen on loan for review. The pen arrives in this cool kind of tweed-looking box with a magnetic lid. I've liked the reintroduced Esterbrook boxes. I like how when you open it, the interior kind of opens up wide a little bit. I don't think there's really any function for that I could see, but I like it. So I guess its purpose is to entertain me, which is good enough. Inside there is a standard international cartridge, as well as a microfiber cloth with the Esterbrook Eternity logo on it, and we also have a pen. This is the Esterbrook Camden composition. There are two versions in this limited edition design. There is the Back to School Black composition, as well as the Spring Break Fluorescent Green. If you're not that familiar with Esterbrook, they were a brand which was founded back in the mid-1800s, and at one point they were the largest manufacturer of pen nibs in the world. In the early 1970s, the company closed down and the trademarks were abandoned. Many years later, the trademark was re-registered, the brand was relaunched, and eventually the brand was purchased by Kenro Industries, who are the distributor of a number of brands here in the US, and the new era of Esterbrook was born. The Camden Classic model was launched at the end of 2019. They had versions of this in a rose gold, a brushed silver, as well as a graphite model. This model here harkens back to the composition books I used back when I was in school, like these here. It has a cloth binding and the iconic marbled splattered black and white design on the cover. I think they did a really good job of replicating the inspiration behind this pen. Sometimes when it comes to a pen with looks inspired by something, you might not be able to tell only from looking at the pen. Someone has to kind of tell you what this was inspired by, and then it clicks, and in your mind you're like, oh, okay, I can see it. That's not the case with this pen. The moment I saw it, I realized the inspiration behind it. The surface does have a bit of texture to it. The cap and barrel are metal. What I'm thinking here is that they first painted the pen white, and then they applied the splattered look with the black. It isn't a printed design or anything like that. It's real splatters. I didn't hear them claim this, but I'm thinking that every pen will actually be unique. Not that you'd be able to really tell that with the naked eye, but I like the looks a lot. I would classify this pen as having a classic cigar shape with more flat ends. I mentioned it was metal. While it does have a little bit of weight to it, I wouldn't classify it as heavy at all. On the end of the cap, it is flat with a rounded edge and inlaid with the Esterbrook Eternity logo. The clip is fairly basic, but I like the looks of it, and I feel it fits in well with the overall design of the pen. It is fairly stiff, but I do find it to be functional. At the end of the cap, it is encircled with a laser engraved textured line, and above that, it's engraved with the Esterbrook name. Now, the line and name show the silver of the underlying metal, but against this busy black and white background, it kind of makes the name a bit hard to make out. For me, without a loop, the letters just kind of look a little jumbled together. But other than filling the letters with a contrasting color like red, I'm not sure what else they could have done. And having a different color here would have probably kind of broken up the overall look of this pen. So I don't have a valid suggestion as to what they could have done differently there. There is a medium-sized step down to the barrel, which is straight for about ½ an inch before tapering down to the end, which is flat and has rounded edges similar to the top of the cap. The cap twists off with a single rotation. Now there is a spring-loaded inner cap here. This is a feature used by mini pens in order to better create an airtight seal to help prevent your pen from drying out. I will say that this spring is rather prominent. When capping the pen, you really need to kind of push down with a bit of intent in order to engage the threads. Underneath, we have a Schmidt nib. Now, I believe Schmidt has their own numbering system for their nibs, but this is essentially a number 6 size nib. And here's a look at the plastic feed. The section is a brushed metal. I'm guessing it's an anodized aluminum. The anodization treatment really helps the section from being slick, and I don't find the metal threads to be sharp if your grip should rest on them at all. Then we have a medium-sized rounded step up to the remainder of the barrel. Now, this cap does post, and it doesn't post especially deep, however, leaving it with what I call the mushroom look, which isn't necessarily my favorite. Also, there's a bit of issue here with that spring-loaded inner cap. If you don't press the pen with enough effort, then the inner cap will actually kind of spring the cap up a little bit. You really need to get it on here. And so also, if you don't get it on here firmly enough with just a touch, the cap can actually kind of jump up, almost leaping off the end of the barrel. Since it doesn't post that deeply, I do feel it backweights the pen a bit, throwing off the balance. It's not too bad, but enough for me to notice. While the tapered barrel really invites you to post this pen, I prefer to use the Camden unposted. This is a cartridge converter pen. It accepts standard international cartridges, and both a converter and cartridge is provided. With the metal parts of this pen, eyedropping this pen would not be recommended. The Esterbrook Camden composition retails for right around $156. I mentioned it before, but this is a limited edition. There were 250 of this model as well as the spring break model, so 500 units between the two. Some retailers have sold out of their allotment, but I was able to easily find a number of online retailers who still had stock of both versions of this pen. I like the nostalgic style of this Camden composition. It's a solid look. I like the metal as well. It's nice and cool to the touch. You'll see in the writing sample, but the Schmidt Nib performs well. The only real knock I have on this pen is that inner cap and how it could affect both capping as well as posting. Other than that, there's a lot to like about this pen. Thanks again go out to Kenro Industries for providing this pen on loan for review. Look for some more good stuff from Kenro in the fairly near future on this channel. Now, it is time for some measurements, size comparisons, and a writing sample. Here we go with some size comparisons for the Esterbrook Camden composition. Just to get another closer look at those spreckles there, I just think they did a really good job of pulling that off. But in regard to a couple of other Esterbrook pens, this is the SD Maraschino, and then this is the Esterbrook JR. And then finally we have a pen from the Carolina Pen Company, which is their Charleston model, and this material is called Earth Magic. I just think this is incredible. And in regard to a couple of other size comparisons, this is a Pelican M805, a Pilot Metropolitan, and then finally, this is actually the second fountain pen I ever purchased. The first was a Lamy All-Star, and the second was a Lamy Safari. So this black Lamy Safari was the second fountain pen that I ever purchased. In regard to some uncapped comparisons, here it is with the SD Maraschino. And then here it is with the Lamy Safari, as well as the Pilot Metropolitan. So here we go with the writing sample for the Esterbrook. Camden composition. This is a fine stainless steel nib, and the ink that I'm using today is Papier Plume Desire. I did review this ink just a few days. I did recently review this ink. This is what it looks like. It's kind of a nice dusty purple. In regard to a couple of other kinds of purple, here it is with the Monteverde Blueberry Muffin, which is kind of more of a blueberry purple, and Monteverde's Birthday Cake. I guess I was hungry when I was choosing out these ink samples. And this is the Papier Plume bottle that they always do a really good job coming up with new and unique labels. And I always really enjoy the wax dipping on top of the cap as well. So here we go with the rest of the writing sample. As I mentioned, this is a fine stainless steel nib. You can get a decent amount of line variation out of here. That there is a bit of feedback to this nib, but I don't find it overly scratchy, and that I find it very pleasant to use. In regard to ink flow, I'd say it's on the medium side. In regard to some reverse writing, it does work, but it's very, very faint. And in regard to some fast writing, the feed keeps up just fine. So there we have the Esterbrook Camden composition. I think this is a really interesting pen. I really like the retro design. The nib on here is decent, so I think it's something that's worth checking out. So until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.